Welcome back to another opportunity to learn, grow, and evolve together to continue bringing that peace and that power that exists within all of us out into the world to be able to share our gifts and so on. It's just being covered by a thin layer of conditioning or whatever it may be. But one of those things that I am very familiar with that has covered up my core self from being expressed the way that I want it to be expressed has been anxiety, which I and my channel are dedicated to exploring, understanding, and moving through and sharing here. And today, my intention is with this video is to share how to quickly and effectively break through a negative feedback loop of anxiety so that we can come back to our lives as quickly as possible without that taking away so much of our time, come back to our lives as quickly as possible from that state of power, from that state of confidence, from that state of creativity and peace, so that we can really show up in all aspects of our life the way that we want to, instead of that holding us down in a negative state. So the reason that I wanted to share this today is really because I went through this morning for about 2 hours this took up of my day, where I wasn't able to do the work that I wanted to do or have conversations the way that I wanted to, because I was so stuck up here in a negative vibration, in a negative loop. And so what happened for me is a trigger came up. A simple trigger around me having to make a decision around moving apartments, moving city. And when this trigger came up for me, this simple decision, right, that is a trigger for me, it triggered my fear of not measuring up because I was feeling judgment on myself, judging myself, but also fear of judgment from other people for how I was managing myself in this decision. The fear of just being unworthy because I haven't been able to show up to my relationships and my work the way I wanted to because of different things around this decision. And slowly but surely, this trigger led to other things that had, like other thoughts, negative thoughts that were part of my negative feedback loop that had nothing to do with my trigger in the first place. And slowly but surely, the unworthiness led to all other areas of my life and my work, how I have shown up in other relationships in the past, and the self-criticism came down on me so hard to the point where I was feeling so just cloudy in my body and feeling that dread throughout my body and feeling that heaviness. And I was in a really low vibration as a result. And so my natural response sometimes is to take the pain away, to find something comfortable. So I went to Instagram. And when I went there, I just found myself comparing myself to others, and the self-criticism went up another level. And so the negative feedback loop, that loop went on again. And this is where we lose our power and we become powerless, because all of this anxiety is draining us. And so we can go from a level 1 anxiety, like virtually no anxiety, feeling good, to a level 9 just off this one trigger if we don't catch ourselves before getting to that level 9. And so what my intention here is today is to break that as quickly as possible so that we can really break it at a level 2 instead of getting caught up in a level 9 and having to soothe ourselves and comfort ourselves to come to a lower place. And so what happened was I was in this state for about an hour. And what shifted for me is I had just a few moments of self-awareness where I recognized that I was in the loop. Now, this is the first step for breaking through the loop, because if you're not aware where you're stuck, then you can't move forward. So what happened for me is when I was caught in this thought storm, this anxiety, this is obsessive compulsiveness around this decision, this trigger, I had just a short bit of self-awareness and space between my core self and what I was experiencing. And it was in that space that I recognized right here is where I have to change my state. In other words, we need to change our state to change our thinking. That original state is not going to bring us out. So it was in that space and in that self-awareness that I said to myself, now is the moment to change. And the first thing that I do to break my state after becoming self-aware is I breathe. Breathing for me is one of the most instrumental and powerful tools in breaking through my anxiety and breaking through these anxious feedback loops, because it immediately changes the nervous system response to what's going on in our body. So typically when I'm in a negative feedback loop, I am short of breathing and I am really, really tense. And so my shortness of breathing, it doesn't allow as much oxygen to come into my body, so my prefrontal cortex starts to go offline a little bit, and that's why this vibration of anxiety feels very low, because the amount of energy that we have in our body is also low. We're not bringing that high quality energy in. And so breathing and changing that short breathing to a full breath, it allows our whole physiological experience to change. And it goes from a negative fight or flight type of anxious response, even when we're not in a dangerous situation, to a much more relaxed, more rest and digest state, where we are notifying ourselves just based off our breath that we're safe. So our prefrontal cortex comes back online. The tensity that we're feeling in our muscles starts to relax. Our perspective and our vibration starts to elevate. And when we can elevate our experience and what we're feeling, the vibration, from a place of fear to a place of curiosity or a place of excitement or joy, then, oh my gosh, do we expand, and we are so able to see things much more clearly and much more creatively, so that we can change how we're reacting to this trigger into a much more beneficial way for us to really come to this from a place of that peace and that power, that core self. So that's the first thing I do, is I change my breathing pattern. And I do it for a while. It could take 5-10 minutes of me just doing deep breathing. But the second thing that I do is I pair that breathing with physical movement, so that I could move that energy around instead of being in what was a slumped over, tense, and really closed and rigid experience. So instead, I started breathing differently and I went for a walk. And that's where clarity really starts to begin for me, because I'm moving that energy around instead of it just being localized in my brain. I know that walking for many people is really beneficial. And so when I started to do this, when I started to walk around and really jump into changing my state, it was only after like 90 seconds, a minute and a half, where I started to feel that clarity come about. But with that clarity and that parting of the clouds so the sun can come through, I started to talk to myself differently. And so instead of having that low self-criticism experience, it was like I had my own personal coach with me, my higher self, sharing with me, hey, it's okay that you are experiencing this right now. This is an opportunity to grow. I was telling myself, right, that each trigger is an opportunity to see where I'm not free and to change how I'm going to respond the next time instead of being reactive. And this started to really come in for me. And I started to look at my entire trigger differently. And as a result, I started to become more creative in how I'm going to handle it. And then after that, it also allowed me to come to this moment with something I'm feeling really energetic to share. And so the entire rest of my day shifted into a much higher state of energy, a much higher vibration, instead of continuing that dreadful, anxious experience that, if we don't catch it, could exist all day. And so slowly but surely my higher self kicked in. I started to think differently. I felt better in my body. I started to release a lot of that stagnant and that dreadful energy. And then my peace started to come back. My core self and feeling centered in myself started to come back. And as a result, now I'm here sharing this with you because it was so, so powerful for me. And I have done this many, many, many times, and the more that I do it, the better that I get at it. Because again, it's a practice, just like building self-awareness, which you could check out, you could check out this video above to build your self-awareness and become better at that too, so that we have more space when we're caught in these negative feedback loops to respond to them without being identified with them instead of reacting with them. And we typically react to them when we're identified with them. And this is how we break through anxiety. It's a series of experiences that allow us to change how we're responding, that allows us to change how we show up to the world, and therefore not be in an anxious state, but rather come to the world from a more powerful, confident state. But it's a practice. So anxiety is not a life sentence. We could break out of this. Negative feedback loops will release their grips when we breathe, when we start to change our physiological state. That's the first doorway and the most powerful doorway I have experienced into changing our ability to not be gripped by a negative feedback loop and effectively and powerfully come out of those anxious feedback loops. So if you found this to be really helpful, if you are finding insight or you have questions about this, let's have a conversation. Drop some comments down below. Let me know how you are feeling about this, how it's working for you. We can have a real conversation about this. And if you are finding yourself wanting to work on building that self-awareness, to build that space, come join me every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. New York Eastern Time, and we're doing group meditation and sharing together so that we are really learning, growing, and evolving together. Otherwise, just check out the video, and there's so many other ways that you could build self-awareness too. Otherwise, if you really found this valuable, a like goes a long way, a subscription goes an even longer way, but only if you valued it at a high level. And I am now offering one-on-one coaching so that we can work on some of these things together that I talk about on my entire YouTube channel, and just bring ourselves out of the cloudiness of being, in that small s self, that not core s self, and into that peaceful and powerful core s self, where we're aligned with ourselves. We are doing what we want to do instead of identifying with somebody else's idea of what we should be doing. Much love to you. I look forward to seeing you in the comments, in the meditation, wherever. And you can find all the information down below. I'll see you in the next video. Much love.